Why is Jimin only smiling when Taehyung and Jungkook are finally back standing side by side? What is the meaning behind the looks of those who meet each other? Is this the end of a painful breakup or the beginning of an unfinished story? ARMY can't stop crying, and maybe after reading this, you don't either. An electrifying moment. Taehyung and Jungkook meet again. Jimin's expression is harrowing. ARMY can't stop crying after seeing Taehyung and Jungkook together again. Jimin smiled. Do you believe that time can heal wounds? Does distance really strengthen a relationship, or does it destroy it? How is it that two people who used to be so close, so harmonious, can finally only look at each other with teary eyes and remain silent?
It was no ordinary day. Not the moment the media planned.
No grand stage, no official announcement. But the hearts of millions of soldiers around the world seemed to stop beating for a moment. Taehyung and Jungkook. Two names that are inseparable from the history of BTS. Two friends, two brothers, two souls as if bound by an invisible red thread. But over the past time, the thread seemed to tighten, pulling from two different directions. Is there something going on behind the scenes? Is the farewell wrapped in smiles and laughter in front of the camera just a mask of an unhealed wound? And then, like a dream too beautiful to believe, they stood side by side again. Can you imagine what the silence of the room was like when the two stared at each other for the first time after what seemed like an eternity? Not on stage, not behind the lights, but in an atmosphere so real, so human. They don't talk. Not immediately. But the ARMY knew even that silence was enough to convey all the stories that had never been told. What is more surprising is not only the meeting itself. Jimin's expression. Jimin, who has been considered as a liaison between the two. Jimin, who once stood in the center, calmed down, hugged, hiding tears with a smile.
Jimin, who that day just smiled.
But that smile was no ordinary smile. There's something deep. There is grief. There is hope. There is emotion. There are wounds that eventually slowly heal. A smile that looks like the word finally. Why didn't Jimin cry like the others? Why did he only look at the two of them with a smile that made thousands of people who saw him cry? The camera was able to record a glimpse of that moment. Not full, not perfect, but enough. Enough to make us all realize one thing. Something big has happened. Something long awaited. Something that made all the wounds open again, but also began to heal slowly. And it's not just about the reunion of three best friends. IT is about a heart that once cracked. About a friendship tested by time, pressure, and perhaps also by misunderstandings. Many wonder, what exactly separated them all this time? Is it just busyness? Or is there something deeper? Rumors of a message from Jimin are driving Taehyung away. About Jungkook's statement that is considered a signal of farewell. About missed phone calls. About messages that were never delivered. And now, all of that seemed to hang in the air when they met. Taehyung, with a deep, stiff gaze. Jungkook, who lowered his head, then looked up slowly, and his lips trembled slightly. And Jimin, who smiled with eyes that couldn't lie. ARMY, who watched it from a distance, couldn't help but get emotional. Cries broke out on various platforms. Even the toughest ones confessed, I don't know why, but seeing them together again made me cry. Is this a sign that they will be back as close as they used to be? Or is this just a one-time moment that is too emotional to repeat? Why is there no official statement? Did HYBE know this was going to happen? Or did this all just happen like a fate that was tired of being postponed? One moment that could stop the world. One smile that can make millions of hearts believe again. And the question now is not just, why did they meet? But what will happen after this? Will Jimin return as mediator? Have Taehyung and Jungkook forgiven each other in silence? Or is this just the beginning of a much bigger story, more complicated, more emotional, and deeper than we ever thought? What if there's something they haven't said yet? What if the smile is a harbinger of the inevitable final farewell? What if this is not a happy moment, but a moment of disguised farewell? One thing is for sure, no one can see that moment and stay the same.
Not for the ARMY.
Not for members. And especially, not for hearts that once believed in bonds that the eye could not see. That day, something changed. And even if they say nothing, the world knows they never found each other again. In silence, in a smile, in tears, and perhaps that's more than enough for now. But also, maybe that's just the beginning. Did I ask this just a coincidence? Or is the universe really organizing something bigger than words can explain? As the camera slowly catches Taehyung's eyes, time seems to slow down. No words, no sounds. But whoever saw knew that something was breaking from within him. Taehyung is not smiling. But he didn't look angry either. His gaze was blank, but not dead. He stood like someone waiting. But not waiting for someone, but rather an answer. And that's exactly when Jungkook turned his head. There's a pause there. A pause that is too long for just an ordinary reflex. A pause that hints, I know you're there. But Jungkook didn't look directly at Taehyung. He looked at the floor, then the wall, then to the left, as if looking for an excuse not to meet gaze. But we know, don't we? We know when someone can't look directly, it's not out of hate. But because of the longing that has been held for too long, Jungkook finally looked up.
Slow down.
And the world seemed to collapse in silence. They don't hug. They don't greet each other. But their eyes speak too much. The army captured it all. Even just from photos. From a 3-second video. From fragments that have already scratched the liver. Have you ever felt so close to someone, but when you finally meet again, you're at a loss for words? That's what happened. And when Taehyung lowered his head slowly, holding a breath that wasn't even audible, Jimin finally walked over. He did not embrace them, not forcing talk. It just stands in the middle. The distance between Taehyung and Jungkook is very small, but the emotional distance they have to cross is too great. Jimin knows that. Maybe because he was the one who used to try to be the bridge. But being a bridge is the most painful thing, because the bridge perceives the load from two directions. And if one side wobbles, the bridge collapses along with it. But that day, Jimin did not collapse. He smiled. And that smile is the reason why the whole world is crying. There are thousands of theories emerged after that moment. Have they reconciled before, but kept it a secret? Is this the first time they've met since the rumored incident happened post-concert in LA? Or did HYB know this was going to happen and just kept quiet for the sake of dramatic effect? But anyone who sees their expression knows. This is not engineering. An even more painful question arises. What exactly caused their relationship to crack? Some fans recalled a moment when Jungkook was seen dodging questions about V during a live broadcast. Others recalled a video in which Taehyung refused to sing a certain part that Jungkook usually did. And other moments of silence. What we used to think were just coincidences now feel like pieces of a puzzle that are slowly beginning to take on their full form. Jimin himself has mentioned in previous interviews that not all wounds are visible on the screen. Is that a clue? Or is it just a general reflection of the pressure they've been under as BTS? We may never know completely. But one thing was clear. That day, the wounds that once existed began to show signs of healing. And perhaps the healing does not come from words, but from existence, from the received silence, of the gazes that finally meet each other, from the courage to stand side by side even though there is still pain left behind. They don't say sorry. Not directly. But did you see the way Jungkook grasped his own fingers, as if holding onto something? Did you see Taehyung's shoulders tremble slightly as Jimin sighed softly? It was no ordinary scene. It was a drama of life that no script could write. Because it's real. And reality. Often more wrenching than any fiction. Did Jimin cry after the camera was turned off? Some fans testified to seeing him wipe his eyes backstage. But even if not, her smile that day was enough to make anyone's heart melt, because no one knew more about their injuries than Jimin. Nothing stood between two people he loved as much as he stood that day. Not in anger, not with tears, but with acceptance, with love, with the courage to quietly make everyone understand that sometimes, just by standing there and not leaving, you're enough to heal someone. What does this moment mean for the future of BTS? Will we see more interaction between the three of them? Is this a signal that their unit will return? Or is this just one piece of a long story that is still being written, page after page, wound after wound, hope after hope? And what made the army wonder the most? Did they cry after the meeting? Was there a silent hug that wasn't caught on camera? Did Taehyung and Jungkook finally say sorry to each other in a whisper that no one but themselves heard? ARMY did not stop looking for clues. From small gestures of expression, from the tone of voice, even from posts uploaded a few hours after, each of which is full of symbols and metaphors. Jungkook posted a picture of the sunset. Taehyung uploaded a photo of the sky with the caption, "Finally." And Jimin? He wrote only one word: come back. Back. Back to where? There's a reason this moment is so jarring. It's not just because Taehyung and Jungkook meeting after a time that feels like an eternity. It wasn't just Jimin's smile that was like a light at the end of a dark hallway, but because we all unconsciously have been waiting for this for too long, and when it finally happened, we fell silent. Not knowing whether to cry, smile, or just be afraid that this is just a moment, like a mirage that appears before disappearing again. Is this real? Or is it just a sweet illusion in the midst of a long thirst for their company? But something in my heart says, this is more than just a moment. This is a message. But for whom? For the ARMY? For management? For each other? The question echoed as they stepped away from the location. Not together, but not in the opposite direction. Like two poles who know how to keep each other at a distance, close enough to feel each other, far enough not to hurt each other. And in the midst of it all, Jimin remains the pivot, IT runs at the back, as if to make sure that the two do not really move away. And when the camera caught a brief moment when Jimin stopped and looked at his two best friends' backs, we know he was remembering too many things. Too many injuries. Too many memories. Dio, you know what it's like to be the one who watches two people you love so much lose their way, but you can't do anything about it. That's Jimin, he once said. I would rather lose my voice than lose my relationship with them. A sentence that used to sound like a metaphor.
But now?
Now it feels like a confession. There is one thing that not many people realize. After that thrilling moment, the camera had time to record an incident that lasted only 2 seconds. But those 2 seconds were enough to make millions of the ARMY sob. Jungkook looked up, just once, towards Taehyung, and Taehyung also turned around, not at the same time, but in a strange rhythm as if it had been written by fate. Like two souls still calling each other, even though their bodies chose different directions, and in the look in their eyes, there was something that words could not describe. Not hatred, not sadness, but something deeper, longing that does not know how to get home. The question now is, what really happened in their past? Why do two friends who used to be inseparable feel so far away? Many theories have emerged. There was a misunderstanding behind the scenes during filming. Some believe the difference in musical vision to be the main trigger. Others speculate that the pressure to maintain a perfect image amid the demands of the world makes them lose their way. But one of the most heartbreaking theories is this: they love each other too much, to the point of not knowing how to deal with the pain that comes from the person they trust the most. Have you ever felt betrayed by someone, not because they did something bad, but because they weren't there when you needed them most? Maybe that's what happened. And Jimin? He saw everything. It watched the cracks slowly grow. He's trying to be a link. But over time, he found out some wounds can only be healed by those who have experienced them themselves. But that doesn't mean Jim has given up. He never gave up. That day, he smiled back. And not a fake smile. Not a smile for the camera, but a smile that comes from feeling. Finally, they meet again. The ARMY began to dig deeper. Some noticed that the song sung during the meeting was a song that Taehyung, nicknamed Taehyung and Jungkook, used to sing during their early debuts. A song with lyrics that describe someone who wants to go back in time, to a place where everything feels simpler. Is that a coincidence? Was the song selection intentional? Or is someone behind the scenes trying to send a signal to the world that even if time passes, the sense that once existed cannot simply be erased? And one astonishing fact began to circulate. On the same day, Taehyung wore a bracelet that Jungkook had given him on his 22nd birthday. A bracelet that has not been seen for a long time. Bracelets that fans thought were lost or discarded. But that day, the bracelet came back, like a promise secretly held all along. Jungkook himself appears to be wearing a plain black hoodie similar to the one Taehyung wore in their trainee days. Some army directly linked it to an old moment when the two wore each other's clothes as a sign of familiarity. Did I ask this all just a coincidence? Or are they talking without words? And when that night, Taehyung posted a story with a song, Let Me Know, BTS's most emotional song about an unsolicited breakup,